The Phoenix, an icon of fire, Clive's brother who bequeathed to him the blessing of the Phoenix. Clive begins his journey with this icon, having access to Phoenix Shift, the utility ability, as well as Rising Flames and Scarlet Cyclone. There are also an additional 2 abilities, Heatwave and Flames of Rebirth, that you can unlock. Hey you guys, today we'll be taking a closer look at these animations to really appreciate the finer details. Welcome to my breakdown series, Final Fantasy XVI's iconic style system. If you don't know me, hi, I'm Bio-roxas. I like to shine a light on the smaller details to show the care and detail that goes into making a game feel and look good. I can't stress enough that while I like to talk about the mechanics and how each ability works, this will not be a definitive guide to maximizing the potential of Phoenix. There are other people that will do a much better job than I will covering that. Anyways, let's get into the breakdown. Just a blanket warning, this may have slight spoilers and gameplay discussion, so if you don't want any spoilers, I encourage you to wait until getting through a good chunk of the game. Phoenix Shift is your main ability and acts as a gap closer, teleporting Clive towards an enemy. Clive wreathes himself in flames before dashing forward and disappearing with these tendrils of fire that show where Clive is moving towards. Clive has the same effect appear around him as he reappears. What gives this such a feeling of speed and power is this subtle little air burst that pushes out of Clive as you start the shift. As this moves out to the edge of the screen, it actually blurs the screen as you dash forward. It really makes it feel like you're zooming forward. If you don't attack, Clive will just land and have a bit of a recovery animation. You can do a physical or magic attack while shifting though to change the follow-up out of Phoenix Shift. Starting a combo will have Clive appearing and striking with his sword wreathed in flames. This animation doesn't change with the aerial version. What's actually pretty interesting is with both versions of this attack, they turn around lighter enemies. Shift Shot is your magic burst attack. This has Clive appearing and shooting a giant blast of magic at the enemy. There's this thin ring that actually appears behind Clive that looks similar to Joshua's ring that appears when he attacks. This has a similar animation while in the air that was angled to shoot the enemy towards the ground if they're light enough. On lighter enemies, Shift Shot works as a powerful attack that downs the enemy. They actively are shown getting stunned and falling to the ground. Speaking of downed enemies, you can actually use Shift to do a takedown or what's called a lifting Shift Shot. The takedown is really just your normal animations, it's just if you attack while you're shifting, Clive will just move into that takedown animation. The other one, lifting Shift Shot, can lift enemies back up instantly to continue comboing them. The only upgrade to this attack is when you master it. The distance with which you can shift increases. One last little note I do want to make about Phoenix Shift, while it doesn't change your magic, there is a nice little flare to your attacks when you change to another icon mid-shifting. Doesn't actually change anything, but I love the splash of color alongside the attack. Rising Flames is an uppercut attack that launches lighter enemies up into the air with a single Phoenix wing. You can see Clive wind up and the Phoenix wing sprouts from his hand as he punches upwards. Flames follow behind the strike, and there are also flames that spiral upwards. Hitting an enemy will trigger the camera to shift to this angled shot to show off the attack. When upgraded, the flames that arise are stronger and more flames spiral outwards, dealing multiple hits to the enemy. The effects of this are incredible, even darkening the ground as it burns everything around. You can even see the flames persisting on the enemy a little bit after the attack ends. I also think it's a really interesting detail that you can see the same magic forming this Phoenix wing, just like the regeneration we see in some of the icon battles. Just keeping that level of detail, even in attacks that are so quick and would be easy to miss, shows the care that the animators put into these attacks. The last thing I'll point out with this ability is that a quick recovery time was built into the attack, so follow-up combinations are encouraged and even part of maximizing the effectiveness of this attack. I personally like stomping on the enemy and shifting into an air combo, but you can follow up with pretty much anything. Scarlet Cyclone is an AoE ability, having Clive summoning both wings and dragging enemies in before he twists upwards and blasts them away. Same as Rising Flames, fire will follow the wings as they spin around. This one's not too crazy, you can see the wings spinning and there's fire pushing out. The upgraded version actually changes the animation. You can just barely see that in the normal version he spins on his foot and crouches during the end of the attack. The upgraded animation though increases the number of hits and spins from Clive. He also jumps during this, allowing you to actually move a small amount while in combat. This is one of my more favorite animations with the Phoenix abilities, simply because it's so dynamic but subtle at the same time. If you use photo mode, you can see these wings appear behind Clive's back and his arms channel the flames rather than covering his whole body. This ability has a really interesting mechanic where you can trigger it while you are being knocked back. This has you flash blue before triggering the attack, and also reduces the time on its cooldown by a third of the time. The only thing else of note is that there's a battle technique that utilizes the AoE type of attack called Collateral Cyclone. It's just a score bonus that indicates how many additional enemies you've caught in your Cyclone. Next is Heatwave. This has Clive summoning a wall of liquid flame with his Phoenix Wing that actually dispels incoming projectiles. He then follows up with some shockwaves. These cut through enemies, throwing them up into the air. It honestly looks like the exact reverse of Rising Flames, with flames following the wing down as it flattens against the ground, with tiny spirals of fire arcing around. Countering magic changes the camera to a cinematic angle just like Rising Flames. Using it normally will send a single shockwave forward, but countering magic will trigger you to do 2 shockwaves back to back. This ability incentivizes counters not only because it increases the number of projectiles, but it also cuts the cooldown time by a third. The upgraded versions double both the normal and counter version, so you'll shoot out 2 with your base attack and 4 if you counter. The slashes are pretty simple, but the upgraded counter has this incredible spinning attack to end off the barrage. I love the way the momentum carries Clive through these slashes, like he's dancing through the air. The description for this ability says that you can adjust the direction of it with the left stick, which, if you aren't locked on, actually lets you switch targets midway through your attack. You can also dodge out of this after the first hit and the second. Once you start the third though, you will not be able to cancel it, probably because you're in the air during the startup of the 4th strike. Other than that, you have a battle technique called Heatwave Counter. This just gives you points for both dispelling the magic attack and hitting the enemy with the same Heatwave ability. Flames of Rebirth is the ultimate ability of this icon. Clive summons both wings and blasts fire out in all directions. You can see the spiraling flames circling all around Clive as flames push out from him, burning the ground. The upgraded version has these giant pillars of flames arcing out over the ground for a second barrage of damaging fire. The other unique part of this attack is how it will partially restore Clive's HP. The amount of HP that is restored is actually determined by this faint green part on your HP bar. This will actually just fill that bar all the way to the top, so you want to use this if you have a lot of HP regain potential, or if you're surrounded by a lot of enemies. So for this attack, it's just a lot of fire on screen, but during the second part of this onslaught, Joshua's flame ring actually appears behind him. There's one more actually really interesting detail. A crystal forms at Clive's chest during this attack. I'm not sure if he's using it to augment his fire attack, or if there is some other symbolism to this. Maybe it's another nod to Joshua, with him holding Ultima inside of a crystal within his heart. That one's probably a reach. Another idea I had was, I know that the Phoenix does have this glowing area around his chest, so it could be a nod to that. I would love to hear your thoughts down below though. Another interesting thing I found was that if you limit break while in the middle of this attack, the barrage of flames will still continue for a bit, damaging the enemy. Of course, this has a battle technique just like the other one's, Collateral Flames. The more enemies that you're hitting, the more points you'll get. And that's all I've seen so far for Phoenix's attacks and abilities. I did just want to showcase really quick the sounds of the Phoenix abilities though. I love how they capture the burning flames of this icon, and you can really hear it come through with your attacks. I just love how each icon has its own like soundscape. It's such a unique thing. I love it. I really hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the iconic battle system of Final Fantasy XVI. If you did, it would help me out so much if you share this with someone you think may like it. If you want to see more, leave a like or drop a comment on what icon you want to see next. I do plan to do Garuda next, but if I see a certain icon being asked, I may shift and cover that first. Subscribe for more of these videos or similar breakdowns on Kingdom Hearts or Final Fantasy XVI. Lastly, a huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. I cannot thank them enough for their support. Their names will be on screen right now. If you want to support me and also get some cool perks along with that, consider becoming a member. Anyways, see you in the next video.